When I was 17, I took a babysitting job that still messes with me today. Not because of what I saw that night, but because of what I remembered after. It was fall of my senior year. I was juggling classes, college applications, and a handful of babysitting jobs on weekends. I liked it. I was good with kids, and families in the neighborhood trusted me. I'd even gotten used to staying late on Fridays while couples went out for dinner or movies. It was easy money. One Thursday afternoon, I got a call from family I didn't know well, the Hartleys. They just moved into one of the older houses on Sycamore Drive, a little farther out, right on the edge of the woods. Their son, Micah, was 6 years old. The mom sounded rushed, but polite. She said they got my number from someone at the PDA, asked if I was available the next evening. I didn't think much of it. Friday was free, and the pay was decent. She said they'd be out late, probably past midnight. Nothing I hadn't handled before. When I showed up at the house the next evening, it was already getting dark. The house was nice, old, a little creaky, but clean. I met Micah, sweet kid, very quiet. He held onto a little stuffed owl and barely said a word at first, but he warmed up when we started a cartoon. The parents were dressed up, rushing out the door. The dad handed me a 50 and pointed to a list on the counter. Pizza's already ordered. Should get here in 20. His bedtime's 8:30 sharp. You can use the TV in the den. Just don't go into the room at the end of the hallway. It's lockdown way. He said it casually, like it wasn't a big deal. But something about the way they left, almost like they were in a hurry to get out, stuck with me. I didn't realize until hours later just how strange that night was going to get. And years later, what I remembered about that house still keeps me up. Micah's parents barely gave me time to settle in before heading out. The mom kissed Micah on the forehead, grabbed her purse, and disappeared out the door without so much as a goodbye. The dad lingered just long enough to hand me a folded list of emergency numbers and instructions, same one I'd already glanced at in the kitchen, then added, almost as an afterthought, if Micah starts talking to his friend, just ignore it. It's harmless. Before I could ask what he meant, the door shut behind him. The house was quiet, not cozy quiet, the kind of quiet where you hear everything. The old wooden floors creaked under my steps. The heating system ticked like it was trying too hard, and even the fridge in the kitchen hummed with this weird, pulsing rhythm like it was alive. It didn't help that the place felt frozen, like nobody had moved a single thing in years. Heavy furniture, lace doilies on side tables, framed black and white photos with faces that seemed just a little too blurry. The hallway near the bedrooms was narrow and dim, lit by a single overhead bulb that flickered every few minutes. At the very end of that hallway, there was a door with a thick black padlock on it. Micah and I were sitting on the living room floor, eating slices of lukewarm pepperoni pizza, when I noticed him looking down the hallway again. He wasn't fidgety or scared, just focused, like he was waiting for something. "You okay, bud?" I asked, nudging him gently. He blinked and smiled faintly. "Yeah, I'm just listening." "Listening for what?" He took another bite of pizza, didn't answer. We played a little, mostly puzzles and coloring books. He liked owls, apparently. Kept that stuffed one clutched to his chest the whole time. But even as he laughed at something I said or pointed out a drawing, his eyes would occasionally drift back to the hallway, always to that locked door. After his bath, I got him tucked in a bed by 8:30, like the note said. He didn't resist. In fact, he seemed eager to get into his room. A little too eager. I was picking up the toys in the hallway when I heard him whispering. At first, I thought he was praying or talking in his sleep. But then I heard a sentence that stopped me in my tracks. "Agnes says she doesn't like you." I slowly walked back to his room and cracked the door open. He was lying on his side, eyes wide open, whispering to the stuffed owl. "Micah," I said quietly. He turned over. "She lives in the dark room," he said, pointing toward the hallway. "Mommy says she's not allowed out anymore." I gave him a soft smile, trying to play along, but something about his tone, it wasn't like when kids joke about monsters under the bed. He was calm, matter of fact. Still, I left the hallway light on, and I made a point not to walk past that door again for the rest of the night. The moment I stepped inside the Hartley's house, I could feel something was off. Not dramatically, not enough to set off any alarms, but just enough to make me pay attention. The parents were already halfway out the door when I arrived. Mrs. Hartley barely made eye contact, mumbling something about the pizza being on the way as she grabbed her coat. Mr. Hartley was the only one who paused long enough to give a proper rundown. Mike has already had his bath. Bedtime's at 8:30. You can watch TV or whatever after that, he said, not quite. Looking at me. Then, just as he reached for the doorknob, he added, almost like it was a joke, if Micah starts talking to his friend, just ignore it. It's harmless. I gave a polite laugh, mostly to cover up my confusion, and nodded. He didn't explain further. Just left. The house was strange. It was clean, but everything felt frozen in time. Old floral furniture, thick curtains, and heavy wooden frames holding portraits of unsmiling people I didn't recognize. The whole place smelled faintly of mothballs and lemon polish. And it was quiet. Too quiet. I've babysat in quiet houses before, but this was the kind of quiet where every creak and whisper felt exaggerated, like the walls were listening. Micah was sweet, polite, but distracted. He didn't really make conversation. He'd answer my questions, laugh at a cartoon, but there was this dull tension behind his eyes, like his mind was somewhere else. I'd catch him looking toward the hallway sometimes, not in fear, just like he was waiting. The hallway itself was weird, long and narrow, with yellow wallpaper that looked like it hadn't been changed in decades. A single overhead bulb flickered every few seconds. At the very end of the hall, there was a door. Unlike the others, it was bolted shut with a thick black padlock. I mentioned it, mostly joking. What's at the vault door? Micah didn't laugh. He just said, that's the dark room, and turned his attention back to his coloring book. After dinner and some cartoons, I got him tucked into bed a little after 8:30. He didn't complain. In fact, he seemed almost eager to go. Do you want her out? I asked, handing him the little plush bird he'd been clutching earlier. He nodded and took it quietly. I was just about to close his bedroom door when I heard him whisper something. At first, I thought he was talking to me. I leaned in. Micah. He didn't look up. He was lying on his side, facing the wall, still whispering. I stepped in, trying not to startle him. What was that? He turned his head slowly. Agnes says she doesn't like you, he said plainly. I blinked. Who's Agnes? He pointed toward the hallway. She lives in the dark room. Mommy says she's not allowed out anymore. I tried to keep my voice light. Is Agnes your imaginary friend? He nodded once, then rolled back over and pulled the covers up to his chin, like the conversation was over. I stepped back into the hallway, heart beating just a little faster than before. That flickering bulb overhead seemed dimmer now. The silence in the house had shifted. It didn't feel empty. It felt like something was holding its breath. Then came a sound, a single thump, from the end of the hallway, from behind the locked door. I froze. It wasn't loud, just a quick, low thud like something heavy settling or moving. I stared down the hallway for what felt like a full minute, barely breathing. Every instinct I had told me to walk down there, check it out, prove it was nothing. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly uneasy since I walked in, told me not to. So I didn't. I turned on the TV in the den, turned the volume up just a bit louder than usual, and told myself it was old pipes or the house settling. But even as I sat there, trying to distract myself with some late-night comedy rerun, I couldn't stop thinking about that door, or about what Micah had said. She's not allowed out anymore. The nightmare started a few days after that night. I'd gone home, gotten paid, told myself everything that happened was just weird. Nothing supernatural. Nothing dangerous. Just an old house, a quiet kid, and a little too much imagination. But in the middle of the night, I'd wake up drenched in sweat, dreaming of a pale face in the corner of a room, whispering without moving her mouth. A woman in a long black dress, sitting in a chair that faced the wall. And sometimes the hallway from the Hartley's house would show up in my dreams, stretched out longer than it really was. Always ending in that door. Always locked. Except in my dreams, the lock was gone. And something inside was whispering my name. I didn't tell anyone. I just started avoiding babysitting jobs. Then my mom put me in therapy. She thought it was stress, college anxiety, lack of sleep. And maybe it was partly. But one afternoon, during a session, my therapist asked me to describe the dream woman. I opened my mouth to answer, and the words just spilled out of me. Too fast, too detailed. She asked gently, "Have you seen her before?" And that's when it clicked. I had. Not in a dream. Not in a nightmare. In real life. Years earlier. I was 5, maybe 6. That house. That same house. My family had lived there, just for a little while. It was a hard year, I remember that. Tense. Quiet. Like my parents were always worried, but didn't want to tell me why. I remembered playing in the hallway. I remembered being told to stay away from the room at the end. And I remembered her. They used to call her the quiet woman. My dad said she'd lived there before us, that she hadn't left yet. I thought he meant emotionally or something grown up like that. But now, maybe he meant it literally. We moved overnight. I wasn't allowed to pack my own things. We never went back for the boxes. My parents never explained why. So that's how I found myself, years later, standing in that hallway again. I'd gone back. I know it sounds stupid. I even told myself it was a bad idea the entire drive over. But I had to see it. I had to know if it was real. If she was real. The Hartleys had moved out, unexpectedly, according to the realtor. The house was listed but empty. I parked down the street, waited until it was dark, and slipped around the back. The spare key was still under the loose brick on the porch. The house was colder than I remembered. Still, dust hung in the air like it didn't want to settle. Most of the furniture was covered now, except for the hallway. That hallway. The light still flickered. The door was still locked, but not padlocked this time. Just a latch. I stood in front of it for a long time, heart pounding. My hand hovered over the handle. Don't. But I did. It creaked open. The room inside was small, smaller than I remembered. The wallpaper was peeling, and everything smelled like mildew and rust. A sheet-covered chair sat in the middle. A wardrobe stood in the corner, tall and crooked. And on the dresser, the only thing not covered was a doll. Its glass eyes had been violently scratched out. I swallowed hard and stepped inside. The floor creaked. I felt the air shift, thick and cold, like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. My skin prickled. There was a mirror above the dresser. Old, cloudy. And in the glass, something was written. Not in marker. Not in blood. Just fog. I remember you. The words were backwards, like someone had written them from inside the mirror. I turned around. The door slammed shut behind me. Hard. The lamp on the ceiling flickered once, then off. I reached for the doorknob, yanked it. Wouldn't budge. Then came the sound. Creak. From behind me. The wardrobe. It opened slowly, the doors groaning louder than they should have. Inside, darkness. And then movement. She crawled out. Head first. Arms bent at impossible angles. Her skin looked like paper stretched too thin, torn in places, revealing dark, empty muscle underneath. Her jaw didn't move, but her mouth opened wide, wider than any human mouth should, and I could hear whispering. Inside my head, her eyes were hollow, and they were looking right at me. Then, from the hallway, faint at first but rising fast, I heard a scream. Micah! He was screaming my name, and the quiet woman began crawling toward me. The second Agnes began crawling toward me. I bolted. I didn't look back. I didn't want to see how close she was. But I could hear her, a sick, wet, dragging sound on the floorboards, punctuated by sharp bursts, like a corrupted video, skipping frames. She didn't move smoothly. She'd jolt forward several feet at a time, limbs bending wrong, neck snapping at angles that made my stomach turn. I sprinted down the hallway, past the flickering light, yelling Micah's name. He screamed back from his room. I threw the door open. He was curled up in the corner, clutching his owl, eyes wide with terror. Come on, I shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him into the hall. Behind us, I heard the wardrobe door creak shut again. Agnes was closer. She was moving fast now. I didn't have time to think. I dragged Micah down the hall and shoved us both into the bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. We backed away, breathless. I reached for my phone with shaking fingers. The screen was cracked, maybe from when I hit the dresser, but it still lit up. No signal. I tried to call anyway. Nothing. Micah was whispering something. I turned to him. His lips were moving, but it wasn't his voice. It was hers. A deep, crackling whisper that seemed to come from inside the walls. Inside him. You left me. You forgot me. You'll remember now. Stop. I begged, grabbing his shoulders. Micah, don't listen to her. Look at me. He blinked, dazed. His mouth stopped moving. A single tear rolled down his cheek. I opened a messages app and typed the only thing that made sense. Did we ever live on Rosewood Avenue? I pressed send, even though the message bar still said sending. Then, miraculously, it delivered. 3 seconds later, a reply popped up. Get out of that house now. That was all I needed. I yanked the door open. The hallway was empty, but I could feel her. Behind every shadow, in the crackle of the ceiling bulb, in the chill that ran down my spine as I picked Micah up and ran. Every mirror we passed, every reflective surface, had her in it, not moving, just watching, face pale and stretched too tight over her bones, mouth hanging open, eyes dark, wide, waiting. We hit the stairs, and I was halfway down when the TV in the living room flickered on. No one had touched the remote. It was static at first. Then the screen brightened, and there she was, her face, pressed against the inside of the glass, twisted with betrayal. As I passed, she reached out through the screen, fingers clawing the air just inches from us. I screamed, kicked the TV stand as hard as I could. It cracked sideways. The screen flickered and went dark. Then all at once it burst open. The cold night air rushed in like a wave, and I stumbled out into the yard with Mike in my arms. The moment we crossed the threshold, every light in the house flickered violently. Then one by one they died. The front door slammed shut behind us, so hard it rattled the windows. I fell to my knees in the grass, clutching Micah, just as headlights lit up the driveway. His parents. They screeched to a stop and jumped out of the car. Micah's mom ran toward us, eyes wide, breath caught in her throat. She looked from me to the house, then back at me. She whispered. You opened a room? The police showed up within minutes. I told them everything. The locked room, the wardrobe, the woman, the voices. They took statements, walked through the house, opened every door. And, of course, they found nothing. The room at the end of the hall was just that, a room. Dusty, empty, no doll, no mirror writing, no wardrobe. They said it looked like it hadn't been used in years. Micah's parents didn't press. They didn't ask me to explain. They just thanked me, quietly, and drove off with him without another word. 2 days later, I found out they'd moved out, left everything behind. No forwarding address, no sale listing, just gone. And I tried again to forget. I threw myself into school, friends, life. I deleted Micah's number, blocked the Hartleys on social media. I convinced myself it was all some trauma-triggered episode, memories crashing into reality, twisting it into something worse. But deep down, I knew better. A week passed. Then, one morning, I checked the mailbox.